Welcome everyone to the Essex County Field Naturalist Club April meeting. My name is Corey Reno, the current club vice president. Thank you for joining us over Zoom tonight. Unfortunately, we still can't meet in person, but this is the next best thing. So at least we can see some of your faces online there. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest presenter, Jennifer Natta. Jennifer, as you may know, is a fellow executive member of the Essex County Field Naturalist Club. She is an urban bird educator for the Pelee Island Bird Observatory. She will be describing the bird-friendly city project, and she'll explain how local partners are working toward making Windsor one of the first bird-friendly cities in Canada. After the presentation, we'll open it up to some questions that you may want to ask to Jennifer. If you want to just either unmute yourself or raise your hand, there's a little button in Zoom that you can raise your hand. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jennifer. Jen, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Corey. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. Let me just get my screen shared with you here and we'll get started. All right, so once again, thanks for letting me have an opportunity to talk about bird-friendly cities and specifically how we are trying to make Windsor a bird-friendly city. So I'll talk a bit about the project and about some of the things that we're working on. So in 2019, Nature Canada and Environment and Climate Change Canada signed an agreement to create a certification standard to recognize and celebrate contributions by cities and towns to help birds in their communities. The goal is to have 30 cities certified by World Migratory Bird Day of next year on May 8th, 2022. They're working with local partners within each city. And here in our city of Windsor, Pelee Island Bird Observatory, or PIBO, is the organization that stepped up to the plate and is trying to make this goal into a reality. Now, we are not the only city working on certification. Here are some of the other cities and some of the local groups within those cities working together to get their cities certified. So as you can see, Windsor is one of the few cities that just has one organization signed up, but that doesn't mean that we are doing this alone. We're reaching out to the municipality, to different organizations and businesses and private individuals, anyone who wants to help us to make Windsor a bird-friendly city. The timing is really great because it's been a pretty rough year. We are all recovering from a really difficult year of having to make sacrifices, missing our families and our loved ones. People have been out of work. Students have been unable to go to school. So while it's been very difficult for us and we've had to make a lot of sacrifices, nature has been thriving. We've been noticing things like less traffic, a decrease in industrial activity, fewer emissions, the ability to hear and see more birds than ever before. People getting outside. I can barely get a parking space when I try to visit a natural area lately because so many people are enjoying the natural areas outdoors. And wildlife has been returning. So wouldn't it be nice to kind of continue in that vein and make some sacrifices for nature, for the safety and health of nature, so that we can capitalize on the gains that nature has made without taking a step back as we return to our pre-COVID level activities? Because birds need the help, quite frankly. Populations have been rapidly declining across North America and beyond, with approximately 3 billion birds having been lost by North America alone over the last 50 years. And these declines are the result of human activities. So things like habitat loss and fragmentation, pollution and climate change. And most of us live in urban areas. So the changes that we make and the choices that we make in urban areas could really have a very positive impact on birds. 25% of North America's birds have been lost in just 50 years, like I said, which is a single lifetime. So that means that 2.9, almost 3 billion birds have disappeared since 1970. So to think that some of us or some of our parents have lived in a world where there were almost 3 billion more birds than there are today is a pretty staggering fact. That's 1 in 4 birds. And if we think of some specific species, grassland birds are roughly 720 million birds have been lost. That's over 50%. So 3 in 4 eastern meadowlarks have been lost. Migratory bird species, a loss of about 2.5 billion. That's 2 in 5 Baltimore orioles. And the aerial insectivores have been hit pretty hard too. 160 million aerial insectivores lost. That's about 2 in 5 barn swallows. So the statistics are pretty gloomy. And Windsor is a great candidate for a bird-friendly city because we do have such important bird areas. We have lots of hotspots like the ones that I have listed here. Maybe some of these are places that you guys enjoy visiting and birding. It's great for bird diversity and other wildlife, and these areas are important to their survival. So that puts a big responsibility on our shoulders to be the protector of these wild areas, because we want them to exist into the future. So we don't want to act irresponsibly. We don't want to harm these hotspots because it's very necessary for the bird's survival. And the reason we have so many hotspots is because we have a warm climate. We're one of the most southern places in Canada. So we've got a really warm climate and a long season. We're along the migration routes. So during migration, there's even a greater diversity here in the spring and fall, and a diverse habitat consisting of forest, prairie, wetland, and Great Lakes. So a diversity of habitats and a diversity of birds. What is a bird-friendly community? A bird-friendly community is a place where threats to birds are mitigated. So I'll talk about some of the threats that birds face and what we're planning to do about it. A place where residents admire and monitor local bird populations. And the admiring has never been a problem. We have birders come from all over the world to see the diversity of birds here in Windsor and Essex County. So if we can get some of these people who are already outside and enjoying birds and wildlife to help monitor these populations, then we can learn so much more about their distribution and the trends that are happening right now. A place where policies are created to protect urban bird populations, so that even if we're doing bird-friendly actions right now, we want to make sure that birds are preserved into the future. There are actual forward-thinking policies to protect birds and wildlife. A place where nature is restored, protected, and preserved and connected, where organizations work together to create events to protect birds. We're going to have some events this year, not as many as we would have if we weren't living through a global pandemic, but we're going to celebrate birds through some events, and we're going to support and encourage the events that others have. We'll just have to try to find some unique ways to celebrate birds, because we want to make sure it's not just all data collection behind the scenes. We want to make sure that we're keeping birds and wildlife and the ecosystem in people's consciousness, and we're enjoying them and celebrating birds through these events. And a place where a bird team is created to oversee and lead these initiatives. So we have created a bird team, and work is currently underway. The road to certification contains 3 categories of bird-friendly actions: addressing threats, restoring nature, and educating and mobilizing citizens. So I'll talk a bit about a few of the things under each of these categories. Category 1 contains threats like predation by cats, window collisions, light pollution, pesticide use, plastic waste, vehicle collisions, and disturbance of nesting and roosting sites. And how are we going to tackle some of these threats? Through education and regulation, recognizing what the threats are, making people aware of these threats, and then figuring out the best way to mitigate them, what we're going to do about it. We'll start with cats and birds, because as a bird lover and a cat lover, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and cats outside are a major problem. So we need to show coordinated efforts to reduce the number of cats outside. Some of the ways that other municipalities have done this are through educational campaigns, licensing, and no roam bylaws. So we have to decide what is going to work best for our city and show that we have an active program to humanely reduce the numbers of those cats outside. And we need to monitor those numbers over time. So we need to try and get a handle on how many cats are out there, and then see if some of the mitigation measures that we're practicing are actually working. And most of this campaign and outreach is going to be directed at cat owners, because every cat out there is either owned by somebody or descended from a cat that was owned by somebody. Even the feral cats, they were brought here by humans. Cats are a domestic animal. They're an animal that we brought with us as a companion. They're not a part of our natural ecosystem, and they shouldn't be out there competing with our local wildlife, because cats are going to win. They're incredibly agile. They're incredible predators. They're wonderful animals, but once again, they should be inside with us, not outdoors, because they are the leading cause of bird deaths in Canada. So if you look at this chart here, the top 2 that are dwarfing all the other bird deaths are both cats, feral and domestic cats. Some people even think that their cat that is well loved and well fed and cared for has no reason to hunt wildlife, and that it's probably not because it's well fed, but it's in their nature. Cats are incredible hunters and it's their instinct. So they are out hunting wildlife and they are having a really negative effect on birds and other animals. Inside cats can live up to 5 times longer than outdoor cats. This cat here is Birdie. He's my cat and he's inside. I don't know where he is right now, but I'm sure that he's safe. He's never been outside a day in his life. And I always know that he's not being chased by a coyote or hit by a car or ingesting some poison, because cats are exposed to dangers every time they roam outside. And the reason I'm talking about cats so much is because cats contribute to large-scale declines in bird populations. It's estimated that cats annually kill 100 to 350 million birds in Canada alone. Now that's staggering. That's just Canada. We're not even talking about the United States or every other country. That's just Canada. And that's year after year after year, hundreds of millions of birds. So how on earth are they going to survive this threat, let alone the other threats that they're facing? So we really have to get a handle on cats outdoors in the environment. They also attack other native wildlife. I've seen them catching chipmunks and snakes and frogs. So one thing that you can do is keep your cat indoors. If there is a cat outdoors or even a feral cat that you feed and care for, make sure that they're spayed or neutered. There are some really cost-effective or even free programs, some TNR, trap, neuter, release programs that will help to fix these cats, because we have no illusions about eliminating the problem of outdoor cats anytime soon, but just trying to reduce those numbers over time, making sure that they're not reproducing and they're not replacing their numbers will result in a decrease in cats outdoors, and that will be a real help to birds. Retraining your outdoor cat. If you have an outdoor cat who loves to go outside, or an indoor cat that loves to go outside, there are some things that you can try. You can introduce controlled access to the outdoors through using a leash or a catio. I mean, you're not going to be able to walk your cat like you would walk your dog, but just letting them have some time outside in the grass to enjoy the outdoors, but in a controlled environment, or through a catio like this one. This is kind of a small catio. Some people have some in their yard that they can bring their cats into. That way they can enjoy the sights and sounds and the excitement of outdoors without posing a risk to any living things. Get them fixed. They have less desire to roam. A lot of times cats are just trying to bust out because they have hormones running through their body. They're on the prowl, they're in heat. So getting your cats fixed can help with that. And enriching the indoor environment. It's called catification. Get some cat trees, get some shelves on the walls. It's kind of fun to make your home even more pleasant for them. I mean, it's their home too. So kind of indulge their natural tendencies and make it your home a really happy place for them. And playtime. Catch, kill, and sleep. That's their kind of natural rhythm. And there used to be a show on called My Cat from Hell, and this guy named Jackson Galaxy was the host, and I watched a lot of episodes of this, and it seemed like it was kind of comical because the solution to every cat behavioral problem was play with them, because cats have this deep desire to catch and kill and fall asleep. So even if your cat's acting out a little, just playing with them and tiring them out can make them kind of crash, and you can slowly retrain your cat to stay indoors. I talked a lot about cats. We'll touch on some other threats much more quickly, like reducing window collisions. Develop and implement bird-friendly design standards. Assess and mitigate the risk from existing and proposed municipal buildings. Some of the ways to mitigate the risk is to retrofit buildings, like in the picture I have here, with those sticky dots in the window that are placed just an appropriate distance apart, that it creates an effective visual barrier that the bird doesn't think that they can fly through. So there are some things we can do. We need to assess what buildings pose risk to birds and then see what we can do about it. And inform and educate property owners and residents of measures that they can take to mitigate the risk of bird collisions as well. And establish a baseline and demonstrate progress over time. So just like with the cats, we need to figure out how bad the problem is right now, think about the best way to tackle it, and then see if it's working and adjust if we need to do more. Light pollution. Municipality having a light pollution reduction strategy, supporting actions to reduce light pollution, particularly during migration seasons. Light pollution mitigation standards for all new developments. Retrofit program to replace street lamps with energy efficient shielded fixtures. an outreach campaign to promote responsible light control practices. And we know about this since our club contributed to comments about the incredible light house pollution or greenhouse pollution in Leamington. So this is one that we're going to be looking at as well. Reduce pesticide use. Insectivores, birds that feed on insects, have been struggling for a very long time. Some populations have reduced as much as 70%, and that's through pesticide use. So reducing or eliminating non-essential pesticide use and restrictions used to control nuisance insects unless there's a demonstrated health risk. So unless there's a malaria outbreak or something, hopefully we can try to reduce the amount of pesticides that we use for the benefit of birds and other wildlife. Now, you might have noticed trends like this, and this is just in a short time, just a couple of decades. There are a lot less insects than there used to be. Some people claim that they used to take a road trip and their windshield was completely splattered with insects. Now, it's much more convenient to not have to deal with that, but think about the environmental implications. If there are that many less insects in the world, then imagine the struggles for all the insectivores, all the birds and animals that feed on insects. Because insects are at the bottom of the food chain. So that means that they are fundamental. They really hold up the food chain. And they're really, really critically important to the survival of birds and other animals and us human beings as well. We know their role as a pollinator and how critically important it is. Plastic waste. Reducing plastic waste through regulatory measures and voluntary measures. Regulatory measures can include a municipal bylaw, and voluntary measures can include things like local businesses using recyclable or biodegradable materials, alternatives to plastic instead of plastic. Reducing bird and vehicle collisions. It's not just buildings that birds are crashing into. Our wide-reaching network of roads and freeways pose a threat to them as well. So considering things like lowering speed limits when passing through important bird habitat, and taking measures to reduce the number of cars on the road, such as a good public transit system or cycling infrastructure. Mitigating disturbance. Policies and practices that protect birds from humans or pets at natural areas or important bird habitat. So things like signage, leash bylaws, or closures during certain times of the year. So we're looking at ways that we can try to mitigate disturbance through maybe creating signs like this. Sometimes people, through best intentions, don't realize that they are posing a disturbance to ground nesting birds and other wildlife. So just kind of increasing awareness and showing that we care and that we're concerned and we're trying to do something about that disturbance can hopefully be a help. Category 2, habitat protection, restoration, and climate resiliency. There's a lot to look at here, so I'll touch on some of it briefly, including protecting, increasing natural areas, promoting and protecting biological diversity, a climate change adaptation strategy, habitat management strategy, containing important bird areas and promoting their stewardship and protection, promoting native local plants, green infrastructure initiative, and increasing and improving breeding or stopover habitat for priority species. So increase and protect natural areas, pretty simple. Show that natural areas are actually protected within our municipal plan, and there's a commitment to increase that natural area in the future. Promoting and protecting biological diversity in our parks and natural areas through an official strategy. Promoting connectivity. We don't want to have just these biological diverse hotspots, but have them be islands where species cannot intermix and interbreed. That's not good for biological diversity. Buffer core hotspots from human activities, harmful human activities. So things like industry, we don't want that to happen right adjacent to biodiversity hotspots. So thinking of how we can separate the two and buffer them to keep those species safe. Increase the number of protected areas, and periodically monitor birds in parks to assess the success of what we're doing. Having a climate change adaptation strategy containing things like wetland creation to absorb and retain floodwater, planting trees to create shade and lower the surface air temperature. And we in Windsor do have a climate change adaptation strategy. We're on our second version. The first one came out in 2012, and in 2020, the second version came out. So we are ahead of the curve in some regards compared to some of the other cities that are working on certification. Habitat management, having a habitat management strategy and increasing the number of trees and area of the urban forest canopy. leaving snags standing in cases where it's not posing a threat to public safety. So you guys know what snags are. They're dead trees. A lot of people think that they are an eyesore, but they're really important in nature. They have a lot of insects that provide a lot of food for birds and other wildlife. They're usually hollow inside and provide roosting and nesting habitat. Protecting trees on private and public lands, and prohibiting active vegetation management during breeding season. So we don't want to be cutting down or trimming trees during nesting season and harming birds that way. Having important bird areas, which are sites that support threatened birds, large groups of birds, and birds restricted by range or habitat. So if we have important bird and biodiversity areas within or adjacent to our boundaries, and whether there is a local partnership to promote and protect the stewardship of this area. And you guys know we are lucky here in Windsor. We are adjacent to many important bird areas like the Lower Detroit River, Holiday Beach, Big Creek, Eastern Lake St. Clair, Point Pelee, and Pelee Island natural areas, and Pelee Island archipelago. So we have lots of important bird areas and a lot to protect and preserve. Promoting native local flora. Promoting the importance of planting native local flora on municipal lands, especially new developments. Subdivision permits should include conditions to protect existing natural habitat and promote the use of native vegetation, and include measures to discourage illegal disposal of yard waste in natural areas. That's something that happens a lot. I mean, nobody should ever dispose of anything in natural areas, but they do. And I think at least with the yard waste, people think it's biodegradable, it's harmless, but they don't realize that some of that yard waste can actually germinate, can escape and start to grow in those natural areas. And before you know it, you have invasive species spreading and out competing our native plants, sometimes that are plants at risk and rare species. Green infrastructure initiatives, widespread community initiatives to encourage native plant habitat that supports native birds and pollinators on private property, increase the urban tree canopy on private land, and support other green infrastructure initiatives to address climate change. Species at risk, implement stewardship to increase or improve breeding or stopover habitat for priority species. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this too, even things like purple martin houses, protecting chimneys where chimney swifts roost, any ways that we can show that we are trying to protect species at risk and do things that will increase their ability to survive and thrive. And the last category, community outreach and education. This is one that I'm working on a lot, and it includes things like public displays, providing native plant and habitat resources, environmental education opportunities, birding locations, updated checklists, host a World Migratory Bird Day event, bird-friendly business practices, and citizen science, and selecting a city bird species. So let me tell you about a few of these. We're going to be educating and mobilizing citizens to try and really do some outreach to get the word out about bird-friendly cities. So educational displays, public displays that educate citizens on the benefits of bird-friendly actions and encourage engagement. Birding locations that have infrastructure to facilitate the observation and appreciation of birds. So do we have any? Can we create some more? Publicly accessible for people without a car, and digital information on these areas should be easily available online. Native plants. I talked about native plants kind of on a municipal level, but we want to provide access to resources that encourage and inform the public as well about native plant gardening, and encourage the establishment of natural habitat patches on private property, because this really adds up. And it's a trend that's really catching on. If one person on the street decides they want some native plants and it catches on and someone else does, before you know it, you've got some habitat there. And we can't neglect private property when we're thinking about the establishment of habitat. It's really something wonderful that you can do to help nature in your area. Outdoor environmental education opportunities for students and organizations to help them connect with nature, enjoy birds, and learn how they can help. Now, we haven't done much of this outdoor outreach yet, and we're currently in a stay-at-home order situation, but as soon as this lifts, we are going to take out some groups, maybe some classes, some groups of scouts and cubs, all sorts of small groups, socially distanced outdoors, so that we can really help connect them with nature and teach them about what we're doing and the reason for creating a bird-friendly city here in Windsor. Checklists. We must publish checklists for our city or town, which are easily accessible online. And we have created some checklists. Different organizations have birding checklists available, but we've created some new ones. There is a checklist for all of the birds that you're likely to see in Windsor and Essex County, and there's one for each season. So this is kind of the old school way to go birding. You can print one of these checklists and record all the birds that you see while you're out, and then hopefully you will submit those records in some citizen science format. So there's lots of checklists that you can use at peebo.ca under the Bird Friendly Cities tab. So check those out and please use them and go birding. World Migratory Bird Day is coming up on May 8th of this year, 2021. And we're going to be having a couple events. We're going to have an online fundraising gala that you can watch for free on Facebook Live. You can also purchase a ticket, which will help fund some of the research that Pelee Island Bird Observatory is doing and be eligible to win some prizes and fun stuff like that. We're going to be doing a virtual scavenger hunt and providing some online resources. It's going to be a virtual World Migratory Bird Day because of the state of the pandemic right now, but we really want to raise awareness about this day because it's something global. It's not just something that we celebrate here in Windsor and Essex County. So there's lots happening that day. There's so much going on. I encourage people to get out on that day, enjoy birds, enjoy nature. And if you do, here are some hashtags that you can use to share with us, to share with other organizations and help spread the word about World Migratory Bird Day. And it's also the global big day, same day, May 8th of 2021. This is a day when birders get out and it's a really fun day. Those records are tracked in real time. You can follow the website and see what birds people are observing all over the world. And not only is it lots of fun, but it's really important science. It's a really important snapshot of bird populations all over the world. And citizen science, it's really catching on. You guys, I'm sure, know what citizen science is. Everyone can be a scientist if you simply record and share your observations. So there's lots of projects going on in our area, some that you can casually participate in and some that you would sign up for and commit to. And it just depends on what kind of commitment you want to make, what kind of time commitment, what kind of travel commitment, what kind of birds and animals you like. There's really something for everyone. There's the Great Backyard Bird Count that just passed. It happened in February. This is a simple bird count where you count birds for at least 15 minutes and you submit the findings of the birds that you've seen. The Great Canadian Birdathon, which is like an old-fashioned readathon, only instead of reading books, you're going out birding. You can set your own goals, like how much money you're trying to raise or how many bird species you're trying to find. And the funds go to Bird Studies Canada, which is the Canadian coordinator for many of these citizen science research projects. So it's a great way to give back to nature. Global Big Day, which I discussed, a big day of birding, the Marsh Monitoring Program, Swiftwatch Ontario, Schoolyard Home Bio Blitz, the Breeding Bird Survey, Project Feeder Watch, Hawk Watch, the Christmas Bird Count, the Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas 3 and eBird. So there's something for everyone. There's lots to do. Selecting a city bird through a public engagement process is something that's going to be a lot of fun. Soon we're going to open up the nomination process. So if you think you know a bird that would make a good city bird, the bird that represents the city of Windsor, we'd love to hear what bird you'd like to nominate and why. So we're going to open up the nominations soon. And once we get the candidates, we're going to open it up for voting and select a city bird. This is one of the criteria of being a bird-friendly city. We need to select our city bird. So that's going to be really exciting to do together as a community. So what can you do if you want to help birds or help us to become a bird-friendly city? You can participate in some of those citizen science projects. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Bird Friendly Windsor. We'll give you lots of relevant content about bird-friendly gardening and bird-friendly actions and update you about some of our progress that we're making and what we're working on. You can practice bird-safe actions. You can treat your windows. You can try to reduce your plastic use footprint. You can get out there and go birding and enjoy birds in your community. You can speak out about threats to birds. Just having it in our conversation is really important. Letting other people that you know or that you care about birds can really be contagious and other people can catch on too. So really speak out about it. Let people know about bird-friendly cities too. We're just kind of getting the word out that we're a candidate to become certified. volunteer with your local nature club or your local nature group or your local animal rehabilitator. There's lots of volunteer opportunities that can be as rewarding to you as they are to nature. Or if you have any questions or suggestions, please contact me, Jen, at education@pbo.ca. I'd love to give you some guidance and hear what you have to say. So thank you so much to all of our partners, and thank you so much to everyone for listening to my presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen.
Great.
We'll open up to questions if anybody has any questions. Just either raise your hand in Zoom or just unmute yourself and ask away.
Can I ask a question? About 3 weeks ago, I was walking in the spring garden, Nancy, and they were cutting down some trees. And you talked about not a good idea, like for the bird nesting season.
Mm-hmm.
Now they were cutting down the trees apparently because there's too many trees growing, and it used to be like the grassland prairies,
Right.
and
Mhm.
so they're doing that to be able to have the grasslands come back again. But
Mhm.
it would have been a better time of year to do it, like maybe in the fall instead of in the spring.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think that what they're probably trying to do now is to do it before breeding season, before the birds are nesting. So that's probably sounds like some of their restoration to open it up to some of the prairie plants. So if you ever are concerned, you make an observation like that and you wonder, why are you cutting down the trees? Why are you cutting them down now? You can call 311 if it's about the city. Don't feel, I'll definitely feel that you can check up on what's going on as a concerned citizen. But yeah, I suspect that they were doing it as early as they can, even doing things like prescribed burns and a lot of the measures that they take. They want to do it before hibernating animals are very active, before many of our migrants come back, and certainly before they start nesting. So that's probably why they were trying to do it nice and early.
Oh, okay. So I guess we've had such an early spring that I figured birds are nesting now.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like this about 3 weeks ago. So that was
Yeah.
still before the nesting, you think?
Yeah, well, some are nesting. I mean, some of the owls and the early birds are nesting, but a lot of the nesting takes place a little later in the spring when there's lots of leaves on the tree and there's lots of food available. So I think they probably figure they're still in the safe zone to be able to do work like that. And I'm sure there were probably, biologists or some people on site to make sure that they weren't causing any trouble and that they were hopefully doing good. So that's probably that was going on.
Yeah, it was from the Ojibwe. The Ojibwe people were doing it, so I'm sure they know what they're doing. But
Yeah.
I just, because you said that, I just wondered.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was not a good time of year, but I guess maybe it's
Mhm.
okay. I guess.
Yeah, it's certainly better than into May and later on. That would be even a worse time. So like you said, maybe late fall or early spring is the best, when there are less animals around and they're not as active.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay.
You showed those dots for the windows to prevent bird strikes. Is there any particular brand that you recommend over another one?
There isn't a particular brand that I recommend. I should have probably checked some resources to share with you guys. There's lots of products online and there's lots of DIY options that you can do also that will tell you how to place them. And when you get one of those kits, it will tell you how to place them. And it doesn't really matter, what color they are or what shape they are. The important thing is the placement and that they stay on the window. So any way that you can treat your window that it doesn't look like it's completely transparent. So some people will, hang strings. There's some parachute cords. Some companies make that, or some people make their own. People use decals and all sorts of sticky things. You can use anything. You just have to make sure you use enough of them and you place them at appropriate distances, because if you just have a couple pictures on your window, birds are going to think they can fly through. So there's definitely lots of information and tips online that you can check out about how to make your windows bird safe. And there's even other ideas. People will put a curtain up temporarily, newspaper up temporarily. I've heard people like rubbing soap on it temporarily, because it's not something that we need. I mean, there is long-term mitigation, and then there is the kind of time of year when the birds are being very territorial. Have you even seen birds attacking car windows and car mirrors, rear view mirrors? Birds do that. I've seen a lot of robins and cardinals attacking them. And that's not thinking they can fly through the window. That's thinking there's another bird and they need to chase it out of their territory. So you kind of need to figure out what's going on. And if you are, like I said, if it's a long-term solution, like this giant picture window is a hazard, there's lots of information online about how to place those visual cues so that it looks like a visual barrier.
Great. Any other questions?
Kind of interesting when you talk about looking in windows. I had a bird that was on my car every day when I went out for like 3 weeks or so, and there's lots of pooping on the car. And he was, I realized that he was looking in my mirror, the rear view mirror every day. I guess he was looking for a mate or something, or
he was probably a male, and he probably thought that his own reflection was another male, and he was being very territorial and trying to chase him out of the territory. So people, I've seen the poop streaks down the car, and it's not good for the paint. Some people, if it gets really bad, they'll even, when they get out of the car, put like a plastic bag over their mirror and take it off when they're going to get into the car and drive away. So that's a temporary, that's a short-term problem, but a pretty big one.
It's funny.
Jennifer, do we have any other organizations close to signing up as partners with PIBO on this particular initiative yet?
We're just in the beginning, the creating partnerships phase. So I don't have anyone to kind of advertise to. We've been talking to St. Clair College quite a bit, talking to their landscaping department. They've been really helpful about finding ways to kind of promote bird safe and bird friendly gardening and natural plants. So that's one that's in the works. We've reached out to the city because we have a lot of work, a lot of those policies. Do we have this policy? Are we implementing this policy? That's something we need to look into, and we need to look into the city's official plan and the parks master plan and that climate change adaptation strategy, and find out what boxes are already checked and then what we still need. So that's going to be a time-consuming process. So right now, lots of emails are going out, lots of Zoom meetings are happening, and we're just kind of trying to make those connections right now.
Okay.
Ask a question about parks. A lot of our parks have grass and maybe some play equipment, but they seem very sparse otherwise. Are there guidelines for how you would improve parks to make them more bird friendly?
That's one that I don't entirely know the answer yet, because some of the parks that you're describing are kind of more recreational places for kids to play where they mow the grass. And a lot of times the priorities are different there. People are afraid of things like snakes in the grass and afraid that their kids are going to pick up ticks and things like that. So sometimes it's difficult to combine those uses to make room for nature and make room for humans as well. So that's some of the stuff that in the Parks Master Plan we need to really look into. And we're just in the beginning stages of kind of ironing that out. So I'm not entirely sure how differently they manage those different types of parks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Karen. I'm wondering whether or not the field naturalists and so forth have been approached already and have had discussions at a board level in terms of partnering up with PIBO on this particular initiative.
Hey, Carl, Karen here. Thanks for the question. And not that I know of, I don't think the board has had that specific discussion about joining as a partner. I was kind of thinking the same thing and had written a note down to kind of bring that up. And obviously we're a fairly large group that could perhaps increase the citizen science points for the certification. So certainly worth discussing.
Yeah, and I mean, I could answer that even before Karen chimed in, because I probably would have been the one to send that email, which I have not done yet. So this was kind of this is kind of me opening up the conversation. So definitely would love to have the club's input and the club's help. You guys, we are a great organization and hopefully we can really make some progress together. So I'm sure talks will come, Karen.
Awesome.
All right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just looking up the Conklin Woods conservation areas. I never heard of it before, so.
Yeah, it's a small one that not a lot of people have been to, and it's pretty unique. It just has a kind of a small walkway, and it's really beautiful. It's one that you should definitely check out, definitely in the springtime. It's a nice place. It's an IRCA property.
Yeah,
Okay.
the wildflowers are incredible there in the spring.
So is the time to go is now then?
Yeah,
And in the
now-
fall, they have a lot of neat trees like spice bush and what's one that smells like root beer? Sassafras.
Sassafras.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
And they
it's a very
have a
nice-
trail with a boardwalk.
Yeah, they have a really nice boardwalk and it gets really flooded underneath, which provides a really unique habitat. Can be quite mosquito-y in the summer. So yeah, I would say the time to visit is now. Check out those beautiful spring flowers. And if you visit later in the season, bring your bug spray. It's worth the trip though.
And if you go in the fall, right at the beginning of the trail, there used to be a witch hazel, and witch hazel blooms in the fall. So it's got little yellow flowers on this bush. So watch for that.
Hey, Jennifer, I have a question. Karen.
Mhm.
That list of cities you showed on the screen earlier on in the presentation, there's
Mhm.
quite a size discrepancy there where Windsor maybe is a rather small city compared to some of the others.
Yes.
Does the certification account for that, or are we all on the same playing field?
I don't know. I think we're all on the same playing field. The rubric that I've received that shows me what we need to be certified, I think it's pretty universal. I mean, the thing is with a bigger city, they can usually, get a lot more momentum behind a project like this, get a lot more partnership. Whereas with us, we're just kind of a smaller group. So in a way, it's an advantage to be a smaller place, and in a way, it might be a disadvantage. So I think it's the same playing field.
Okay.
Mhm.
And in our case, can we bring in partners like the National Park out Point Pelee, or because they're not in Windsor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this is about being adjacent, and we're talking about Windsor and
Okay.
Essex counties. So it is the certification would be for the city of Windsor, but I mean, you drive 10 minutes and you're outside of Windsor and you're into the county. So I mean, nature knows no boundaries. So we definitely wouldn't say no to partnerships like that.
Cool, thanks.
Mhm.
Great.
I have another question for anybody out there. Do we know which buildings in Windsor or other places in the county have the reputation as being the worst for bird strikes?
That's a good question, Carl. I don't know. And we're kind of working on hiring another assistant to a student, and we're just at the beginning stages of data collection. So I'm sure there's lots of data for us to collect about this. And like I said, we do have to establish kind of what threats collisions pose to birds right now. So I'm sure we will find that out, but I'd be curious to know when we do find out what it is. I mean, you would think, sorry?
Who at the city was responsible this last go round with regard to the climate adaptation strategy or policy?
I know that Karina Richters was one of the ones who really helped create and implement that strategy. So I think she probably knows it back to front, and she might know. So I know a lot of new buildings haven't gone up lately, but I know they have put up some of those dots at, I think, the new city hall, or just trying to find out kind of what the city has done already and what we could do in the future. So yeah, again, just trying to find out some of that information as a starting point.
Well, speaking of tall buildings, does anybody know if the casino has been sensitive to this issue at all, and whether or not they've done anything on their higher up floors at least? No. Okay.
Not that I know of. Yeah, that's one to definitely look into, Carl.
Maybe we should have a field trip eventually somehow and just do a walkabout around around those buildings, certain buildings downtown, to see if we can identify which places and so forth are causing a lot of the bird strikes in the area.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
the-
sure we could see some of the threats ourselves. Yeah, we could identify some of the problem areas.
Maybe the people at Code Green have already gone down this path. Code Green being the group of people at the casino that have been organizing and volunteering with respect to so many initiatives and so forth in the area here recently.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, that's definitely one to kind of reach out to, because that is it's a big building, several big buildings, and a big employer, and I'm sure they create a lot of light pollution as well. So that's definitely someone that we can talk to.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments?
I think this was an excellent presentation, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks, Carl.
Was very good.
Good. Thanks. Like I said, I haven't reached out to the club to talk about it yet. So I was happy when Corey kind of invited me to talk about it early in April. So now that it's out there, let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. Like your suggestion about the casino, Carl, is a real great one that I hadn't even thought of yet, because we're just, like I said, we're just in the brainstorming stage. It's just early days. So we're just starting to think of what we can do to make Windsor a more bird-friendly city.
Great. Well, on behalf of the club, Jennifer, thank you very much. This is a fantastic presentation. I'm really looking forward to seeing, hearing more as this project progresses, and definitely being involved in some way, whether it be through the club or, just as a volunteer itself. I'm looking forward to that as well. So again, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining in the presentation tonight. You can look for it again on YouTube and share it with your friends if you want anybody else to have a look at this as well. Thank you very much. Have a great night.